to get up a polish on the worn-out surface of an ancient pair of buckled shoes. The figure was slender and almost wizened, the thin shoulders round with an habitual stoop, the lean shanks were encased in a pair of much-darned, coarse black stockings. It was the figure of an old man, with a gentle, clear-cut face, furrowed by a forest of wrinkles, and surmounted by scanty white locks above a smooth forehead, which looked yellow and polished like an ancient piece of ivory. He had looked across at Marguerite as he spoke, and a pair of innately kind and mild blue eyes were fixed with tender reproach upon her. Marguerite thought that she had never seen quite so much goodness and simple-heartedness portrayed on any face before. It literally beamed out of those pale blue eyes, which seemed quite full of unshed tears. The old man wore a tattered garment, a miracle of shining cleanliness, which had once been a soutane of smooth black cloth, but was now a mass of patches and threadbare at shoulders and knees. He seemed deeply intent in the task of polishing his shoes, and having delivered himself of his little admonition, he very solemnly and earnestly resumed his work. Marguerite's first and most natural instinct had, of course, been one of dislike and mistrust of anyone who appeared to be in some way on guard over her, but when she took in every detail of the quaint figure of the old man, his scrupulous tidiness of apparel, the resigned stoop of his shoulders, and met in full the gaze of those moist eyes, she felt that the whole aspect of the man, as he sat there polishing his shoes, was infinitely pathetic, and in its simplicity commanding of respect. "Who are you?" asked Lady Blakeney at last, for the old man, after looking at her with a kind of appealing wonder, seemed to be waiting for her to speak. "A priest of the good God, my dear child," replied the old man with a deep sigh and a shake of his scanty locks, "who is not allowed to serve his divine master any longer. A poor old fellow, very harmless and very helpless, who had been set here to watch over you. You must not look upon me as a jailer because of what I say, my child," he added with a quaint air of deference and apology. "I am very old and very small, and only take up a very little room. I can make myself very scarce. You shall hardly know that I am here. They forced me to it much against my will, but they are strong and I am weak. How could I deny them, since they put me here? After all," he concluded naively, "perhaps it is the will of le bon Dieu, and He knows best, my child, He knows best." The shoes evidently refused to respond any further to the old man's efforts at polishing them. He contemplated them now, with a whimsical look of regret on his furrowed face, then set them down on the floor, and slipped his stockinged feet into them. Marguerite was silently watching him, still leaning on her elbow. Evidently her brain was still numb and fatigued, for she did not seem able to grasp all that the old man had said. She smiled to herself too as she watched him. How could she look upon him as a jailer? He did not seem at all like a Jacobin or a terrorist. There was nothing of the dissatisfied democrat, of the snarling anarchist ready to lend his hand to any act of ferocity directed against a so-called aristocrat, about this pathetic little figure in the ragged soutane and worn shoes. He seemed singularly bashful too, and ill at ease, and loath to meet Marguerite's great ardent eyes, which were fixed questioningly upon him. "You must forgive me, my daughter," he said shyly, "for concluding my toilette before you. I had hoped to be quite ready before you woke, but I had some trouble with my shoes. Except for a little water and soap, the prison authorities will not provide us poor captives with any means of cleanliness and tidiness, and le bon Dieu does love a tidy body as well as a clean soul. But there, there," he added fussily, "I must not continue to gossip like this. You would like to get up, I know, and refresh your face and hands with a little water. Oh, you will see how well I have thought it out. I need not interfere with you at all, and when you have made your little bit of toilette, you will feel quite alone, just as if the old man was not there." He began busying himself about the room, dragging the rickety, rush-bottomed chairs forward. There were 4 of these in the room, and he began forming a kind of bulwark with them, placing 2 side by side, then piling the 2 others up above. "You will see, my child, you will see," he kept repeating at intervals as the work of construction progressed. It was no easy matter, for he was of low stature, and his hands were unsteady from apparently uncontrollable nervousness. Marguerite, leaning slightly forward, her chin resting in her hand, was too puzzled and anxious to grasp the humour of this comical situation. She certainly did not understand. This old man had in some sort of way, and for a hitherto unexplained reason, been set as a guard over her. It was not an unusual device on the part of the inhuman wretches who now ruled France, to add to the miseries and terrors of captivity, where a woman of refinement was concerned, the galling outrage of never leaving her alone for a moment. That peculiar form of mental torture, surely the invention of brains rendered mad by their own ferocious cruelty, was even now being inflicted on the hapless, dethroned Queen of France. Marguerite, in far-off England, had shuddered when she heard of it, and in her heart had prayed, as indeed every pure-minded woman did then, that proud, unfortunate Marie Antoinette might soon find release from such torments in death. There was evidently some similar intention with regard to Marguerite herself in the minds of those who now held her prisoner. But this old man seemed so feeble and so helpless, his very delicacy of thought as he built up a screen to divide the squalid room in two, proved him to be singularly inefficient for the task of a watchful jailer. When the 4 chairs appeared fairly steady and in comparatively little danger of toppling, he dragged the palliasse forward and propped it up against the chairs. Finally, he drew the table along, which held the cracked Urim basin, and placed it against this improvised partition. Then he surveyed the whole construction with evident gratification and delight. "There now," he said, turning a face beaming with satisfaction to Marguerite, "I can continue my prayers on the other side of the fortress. Oh, it is quite safe," he added, as with a fearsome hand he touched his engineering feat with gingerly pride, "and you will be quite private. Try and forget that the old Abbe is in the room. He does not count, really he does not count. He has ceased to be of any moment these many months now that St. Joseph is closed, and he may no longer say Mass." He was obviously prattling on in order to hide his nervous bashfulness. He ensconced himself behind his own finely constructed bulwark, drew a breviary from his pocket, and having found a narrow ledge on one of the chairs on which he could sit, without much danger of bringing the elaborate screen on to the top of his head, he soon became absorbed in his orisons. Marguerite watched him for a little while longer. He was evidently endeavouring to make her think that he had become oblivious of her presence, and his transparent little manoeuvres amused and puzzled her not a little. He looked so comical with his fussy and shy ways, yet withal so gentle and so kindly, that she felt completely reassured and quite calm. She tried to raise herself still further, and found the process astonishingly easy. Her limbs still ached, and the violent intermittent pain in her head certainly made her feel sick and giddy at times, but otherwise she was not ill. She sat up on the palliasse, then put her feet to the ground, and presently walked up to the improvised dressing-room and bathed her face and hands. The rest had done her good, and she felt quite capable of coordinating her thoughts, of moving about without too much pain, and of preparing herself both mentally and physically for the grave events which she knew must be imminent. While she busied herself with her toilette, her thoughts dwelt on the one all-absorbing theme. Percy was in Boulogne. He knew that she was here, in prison. He would reach her without fail. In fact, he might communicate with her at any moment now, and had without a doubt already evolved a plan of escape for her, more daring and ingenious than any which he had conceived hitherto. Therefore she must be ready and prepared for any eventuality. She must be strong and eager, in no way despondent, for if he were here, would he not chide her for her want of faith? By the time she had smoothed her hair and tidied her dress, Marguerite caught herself singing quite cheerfully to herself, so full of buoyant hope was she. End of chapter 18.